Thanks for joining us. I'm Nancy Furness, and this is We've Got Issues. We're filming today at Poirier Library in Coquitlam, and we'd like to thank the library for giving us this space to carry out our interviews. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that our interviews are taking place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of Coquitlam First Nation. So we thank the Coquitlam people who continue to live on these lands and to care for the lands and the waters and all that lies above and below. So today I'm joined by Janet Krgovich of the Roy Stibbs Residents Group. So Janet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Roy Stibbs Group? Where is your neighborhood and what started this group? Why did you start this group?
Okay, well, our neighborhood is in the West Coquitlam area. It's really in the middle between two transit-oriented stations, Lougheed and Burquitlam. And it's right in behind the Vancouver Golf course.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a very quiet neighborhood. A lot of people in the area have lived there for a very long time.
Well-established
and it's
neighborhood.
a well-established neighborhood. There was very little change for a number of years. The reason our community group started, or residents group started to form is because we were all going through a period of radical change in our neighborhood. We're changing from a suburban area into a very high density neighborhood, and with it is coming, a lot of change that people just aren't ready for. So,
well, can you tell us a little bit? Like, you've described your neighborhood a little bit, that it's a well-established, older neighborhood, quiet. Can you describe a little bit more the kinds of changes that you're seeing?
Well, because we're within, part of our area is within the transit circles that are designated for the SkyTrain stations, it's gone from, well, for instance, 12 family homes across the street are now going to be 457 units. So that's a considerable increase in just a city block.
That's definitely a lot. And these are transit-oriented areas where they've been mandated for densification?
Right, through the new housing legislation.
Okay,
right?
the provincial level.
The provincial level, yes.
Okay.
So we just didn't want people to feel alone in the change. And so we decided to put together a group of people, and we now have a website where we can communicate with one another and stay informed.
So it sounds like a well-organized group. And I know you mentioned you have a website, and I know on your website it says A Voice for Thoughtful Growth. Can you speak to that? What does thoughtful growth look like to you or to your neighborhood?
Well, we're not opposed to redevelopment. What we hope for, though, is that some of the characteristics that are in the neighborhood stay in place, and that whatever is being built is going to meet the needs of the people that are coming. We've always been a welcoming community. We've had a school that's really served as the center, an elementary school served as the center of our neighborhood, and it's been a strong source of connection for the people that are there. And I think that that's the reason why people have stayed.
Oh, they feel that sense of community.
They definitely do, yeah.
So what else builds that sense of community? I know that with the changes, you've got densification. You're also seeing a lot of big trees coming down, and the nature of it is changing a little bit. Why is that? urban forest so important to your neighborhood, or is it?
Well, it is to many of us, primarily because it's the reason we came to live in that neighborhood. It offered, you know, the tree canopy that you could experience just walking out your front doorstep. And we're incredibly fortunate to have a creek that actually runs through our neighborhood, which is it's called Austin Creek, and it's part of the Coquitlam watershed. So there's always been these strips of green space that we could walk through and around and enjoy them all the time. And what we're seeing now through development is that these places are being culverted, or trees are being removed unless they're right up against the bank, and we're not experiencing that anymore.
So that's changing the whole neighborhood feel. Is there a sense of grief that goes along with that?
There is. I think that, well, you grow accustomed to having that, and it isn't until you've lost it that you actually really recognize the loss that you've, you have to endure, because the trees that are being removed really cannot be replaced in a very short period of time. They're big trees. I did a little bit of research about the history of our neighborhood not all that long time ago. And I mean, it was a community that was farming, and then it went into, in the 50s and 60s, which is when most of our homes were built. And it's really changed a lot since then.
Well, I sense that you're struggling with the rapid changes that are taking place, and that they're not always in the view of the neighborhood, maybe not always positive changes.
Well, that's true. It's not just the growth, it's the speed at which it's happening, and we're not getting the amenities that we need that go along with it.
Okay, so there's all kinds of interconnected issues here. So as far as, protecting some of that fabric of your community with the urban forest and keeping those spaces that you're talking about along the rivers intact, Coquitlam has just published a draft urban forest management strategy. What does that mean for those big trees in your neighborhood? Does it protect them?
Well, I guess the short answer is not really, or a firm no, because Coquitlam currently has a very permissive bylaw, and this bylaw has really not been updated since 2010. So what is allowed on each individual residential lot is a removal of 2 trees per year. So it doesn't take very long before you can eradicate the entire neighborhood if you're allowed to do that.
So these trees no permits required, there's no reason, it's just if you want to take down the big trees?
Yes, you're allowed to. And
okay.
I think the reason that it's so important that they revisit this bylaw is because bylaws are set in place to keep current with the times and to really protect the community and meet the needs of today, not the needs of yesteryear, because those trees in our neighborhood were intentionally left behind, like in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And it's really a shame to see that these are all disappearing now through block by block. And there needs to be some kind of mechanism in place to, let's just say that the city must structure the policies and deal with these things in their community plan. And then that makes the development and individual homeowners have to follow those rules. And they need to be set so that the entire community benefits, just not a small subset of people.
Right. So those big trees are especially important. I know Coquitlam is doing some planting of trees, which is great. But those big trees that you're talking about, we know that as trees mature and get older, that they contribute more and more, both, for stormwater management, cooling, if you're getting densification, the city's warming up with all that concrete, you've got mental health, and just the whole idea of neighborhood continuity there. So, what are you asking the city of Coquitlam to do? What changes specifically would you like to see in the urban forest management plan or strategy?
Well, for one thing, I think we absolutely need to set a target for what the numbers of trees should be. I mean, we need to establish that, because if we don't, we won't know whether we're losing or gaining, even with the planting of new trees.
Okay, so the positive side, the planting, is being accounted for, but the negative side, losing those big trees, is not being accounted for.
There's no mechanism in place to really know.
Right.
There's no permitting required for it, and by having to permit doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bring fees and charges along with that. It's just really a formal way of really recording what is current in the neighborhood and what has been removed. So I think that it would just be another way too of bringing people, if they want to remove a tree, to actually come to the city and apply to do that. And at that point, staff could have discussions with the people about the reason why. If it's a tree that's dying or is posing a threat, or for other reasons, I mean, of course they would allow them to remove it. But if it's there as a healthy tree that's supplying shade and stormwater management and clean air for the community, why would we want to see those all removed?
Well, and I see your point there, that even by having a permit, it's an opportunity for education. Some folks may not be aware of what that tree is actually contributing to the community.
That's right.
This is a chance to talk to them about that as well.
Exactly.
So, are there any misconceptions in your opinion about development in trees? Can we have development and keep trees? Is that possible?
Well, absolutely. I think that so many of the structures, and I'm not going to call them their homes, actually, not structures, that we're seeing in our areas, they could have easily tried to accommodate some of the perimeter trees, or trees that were, not right smack center in the middle of the site. We have an example of that in our neighborhood right now, where there's a spine of trees that have stood for, over 100 years.
Oh, wow.
That are going to be taken out in the next month or so.
That's a little bit heartbreaking. I have to agree with that.
It is.
Especially if there's ways that can be avoided.
Well, I guess with the rules that are currently in place, like I said, the developers will go along with what the city lays out for them. And when the city's not prescribing something that is going to keep some of these trees, that's what's going to happen.
Well, it sounds like maybe people have to speak up. What are some ways that you can suggest that people could advocate for retaining those big trees in their neighborhood, those big healthy trees?
Well, a heritage tree protection or a legacy tree protection, by actually doing an inventory of some of these significant trees. That's something that can easily be done. I mean, these trees could be nominated even by the community. It doesn't necessarily mean that, a staff person would have to go out and recognize this. So things like that. I mean, there's lots of programs that, would enhance and to keep our neighborhoods the way we are if we could do that.
So it sounds like there's an opportunity for people to input into that, and also to tighten up those tree protection bylaws. Is there any mechanism for folks to input into the community or the urban forest management strategy right now? How would people get their comments out?
Well, I think we're like in the 11th hour right now, from what I'm seeing on the city's website. They have had a public engagement, in the past. It's been ongoing for the last few years, but it was sort of forgotten for a while, and now it's come back again, and they've already prepared their draft, which many of us are struggling with because it doesn't really seem to address what we actually need to keep. There's a really strong initiative for tree planting, but there is nothing for retention. And we're not going to be able to plant our way out of the canopy loss.
I think I spoke to one resident who likened it to trying to fill a bucket with a big hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and without those permits, we don't know who's taking those trees down or how many
Right.
trees. So you don't even know how big that hole in the bottom of the bucket is, really.
Well, that's true. And, you'll get some people that will even circumvent doing that approach to the city where they go and say, hey, I really want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
which, you normally find out when you're, who's done what at some point, but
Right.
it's always too late.
I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing your thoughts and concerns about your own neighborhood and about trees in our community.
Well, I think, too, that we have to recognize that I'm here specifically talking about Roy Stibbs,
Mm-hmm.
but with the new housing legislation, this is something that could be typical throughout many areas in the city, whether it be a larger scale development or if it's just an individual homeowner rebuilding or redeveloping their property. We're going to see this change.
Right, so it applies to across the board in Coquitlam. So everybody should be taking a look at
paying
this.
attention to this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. This is We've Got Issues, and we've been speaking with Janet Krgovich of the Roy Stibbs Residents Group.